Hello friends, and welcome to this video where I will show you how to create this winter landscape with Neocolor II crayons. I think this is the time of the year when you can see so much unexpected beauty around you, especially if you are living the winter season here in the Northern Hemisphere. There are just so many beautiful winter sceneries there. And today I wanted to take a moment to just use my imagination and draw something that would have those kind of early or late winter colors. Depending a bit how much snow you might have, this might not be what your winter looks like, but this is kind of my interpretation of a beautiful winter scene on a day where there might have been a bit of snow, but not too much. So I'll start by sketching very briefly some very basic guidelines, so where I want to have and what I want to have in my picture, and then I will continue to build the first layer of color with Neocolor II crayons and continue to build the layers from there. As you probably know by now, I just love Neocolor IIs because I think these might be the most versatile, or at least one of the most versatile art supplies out there. And I really enjoy how much you can do with these and how different kinds of textures and illustrational styles you can actually create with these crayons. And that's what I wanted to show you today, so hopefully I can inspire you to test new ways to use your crayons and also just take them out there and enjoy the moment. What you can see here also is that I will be using my Caran palette, which I love to use for mixing these crayons and kind of finding new color mixes. And I also use it to turn these crayons into more gouache-like, paint-like consistency, which I can then use for details and just layering. So I like to layer these crayons a lot, and that's what you will see during the video. I also will be using my Holbein synthetic watercolor brushes, and the sketchbook I am using today is by Hahnemühle. It is Hahnemühle's watercolor sketchbook, and I will have the details in the description in case you are interested. So as said, my approach to these crayons very often is the same as what you can see here. So I will first start by adding kind of first layer of color blocking different areas. And at this stage, it's going to look very messy, and I'm just going to have the kind of initial colors in place. And that way I know where to then start building what colors and, doing this initial sketch. And this is I would say, one of the most enjoyable phase of the art, really, for me at least. It's just so fun to see how the colors glide on the paper and how different pigments and colors mix together. So as you can see, this is very kind of relaxed and I would say, just very loose style of creating this first layer of color. The colors I'm using here are mainly what I love to use pretty much in all my landscapes, and I have some of my top 10 favorite videos on my channel if you want to check what the usual colors are. But basically I love to use beige, raw umber, sepia, Payne's grey, Prussian blue, and different kinds of greens. So those would be kind of the basics. And then I have the light cobalt blue hue, which is one of my favorites for water and sky. And I'm also using here different grays, so light gray and gray, simply because, well, they are just wonderful mixing colors and they work really well for this kind of winter scenery. As you can see, I really enjoy just, laying down the crayons on the paper, and it's then going to be a nice surprise, or not too much of a surprise if you know what you're doing, but once you start activating the colors. And what I like to do is that I use a fairly large brush for the first layer, so I like to activate the colors in a way that there's pretty much water on the paper, and that way the different kind of colors really beautifully mix together. So that's something I really enjoy doing, and you can see me using those different techniques here as well. And then later on we will move into kind of smaller brushes and more details. But the first layer can be say very loose. Don't worry if you mix the colors together. That's actually kind of the purpose of what you're doing here. So you can have that smooth background for your details and kind of more detailed artwork then later on. I think this time of the year after Christmas days is always a good place to just slow down and think about your art and take some time for you and time to also reflect what you've been creating and what you'd like to create during the new year as well. I think that very often we see that this is the time of the year when people are hustling around and setting good intentions and making New Year's resolutions. And I mean, I'm nothing against that. Don't get me wrong. That's fine if that's something you want to do. But maybe this year you could test a new or different approach and just take a very slow and mindful start of the year. At least that's something I'm intent to do, because I feel that January is always super busy all month in my day job. And that being said, I think that my art is the place which helps me to relax and be mindful and stay in the present moment. So that's what I'm going to do with my art this month, or the January, which will soon start. But also I think that art is such a relaxing way to spend the days between Christmas and New Year. And also, I mean, why not start the new year with a very strong art journey of your own? When you're working with Neocolor IIs, one of the kind of most important things is to really understand how the crayons activate with water and what happens if your surface is still damp or even wet, and how you can use that dry on wet technique, or what happens when you activate the colors, how you can mix them on paper, which is something you can see me doing a lot here. And also kind of exploring how they act on different surfaces, and test what works for you. So that's always what I'm saying here on my channel, that what might work for me might not work for your art style, but I want to inspire you, and hopefully you feel inspired by watching my videos to test and try and see what is the best way for you to use these crayons. What I like to show on my channel is that you can use Neocolor IIs in so many different ways, and especially when doing any kind of nature art, there are so many wonderful ways to use these crayons. So just test and see what works for you. What I've realized is that for me, what works best is really mixing the colors, whether it's mixing them on a paper, which is something you've seen me do during this video, or using this palette for mixing them. And if you don't have the Caran palette, which has a bit of rough surface, which is why it's very good for these crayons, you can also use, I would say, like a basic cutting board, plastic cutting board, which would then be, of course, dedicated solely for your crayons. No more food cutting on that cutting board, but a plastic cutting board with a bit of a rough surface, that should do the trick as well. And as you can see, my palette has the kind of previous crayons there, so pigments and crayons from my previous artwork, because you can easily reactivate them and use the crayons or the pigment that you have on your palette already, and that way you are not wasting any of these precious crayons. So that's what we will see me doing here as well. But yeah, getting back to the original topic. So for me, really mixing the colors is the key when using these crayons, and also layering. And those are the two things that I feel make all the difference for me whenever I'm creating art with Neocolor IIs. I think that by mixing these colors together, I can get the more kind of I would say natural looking end result, or something that is a bit more muted. For example, when we look around during the winter time, the colors we see around us are very muted, but they're also very different colors. So it's not all just gray or white or dark gray or beige. So there are different colors and different tones, and when you do lots of color mixing, that's how you can create those interesting tones for your landscapes as well. So I don't always have the specific color mixes. There are some that are my favorites, and I've shared some of those in my previous videos, but I also just love to test and try and see what works for the artwork that I'm currently working on. For example, in this piece, I really enjoyed mixing these different grays and greens together because I think that just gave such interesting, well, not surprisingly, grayish green that can be seen around in the forest and nature this time of the year. So really, as always, I'm just encouraging you to test and see what works for you. But I also wanted to keep my crayons visible here so that you can see what kind of colors I'm mixing together. As said, I'm not mentioning all the color mixes, but you can kind of get the overall idea how I create these different tones and how I like to add them to the paper. I'm also always recommending you to have a paper which can handle quite a lot of water whenever you're working with Neocolor IIs, because that way you can really utilize their amazing qualities and the versatility. For example, here you can see that I'm adding quite a lot of water using them as watercolor, and that way I can have this beautiful kind of texture and layering and interesting depth to the landscape that I'm painting. As I keep working on this small landscape, I wanted to thank each and every one of you who've been with me on my channel during this year. It has been quite a journey. I started my YouTube channel in January 2025, and I think now that we are very much approaching the year end, it's good time to also reflect a bit how the year has been, and that's definitely what I will be doing, and I'll also share some of my thoughts in a separate video in January. But basically, I mean, starting your YouTube channel when you have zero presence in social media with your art, it is a journey. That's much I can say. And there have been some moments of despair, and I've been wondering if anyone ever would watch my videos. And what I'm really creating these videos for is to spread my love of arts and really share some inspiration. And that's all I wish. I hope that when you watch my videos, you feel inspired to create some art of your own, because art for me is such important way to express my feelings and also kind of my emotions, and it's a way to relax. It's also just a way to create something beautiful. So that's what I hope to spread in my channel. I hope that you will also feel inspired to create some art on your own and enjoy the process. But it has been a really interesting journey during this year with my YouTube channel, and I have to say I've learned a lot, and I'm really happy and grateful to have all you here with me, following along and encouraging me. And each and every one of you and your comments, they mean so much to me as a smaller YouTuber, so thank you so much. If you want to work with Neocolor II the way that I do, that you create these different layers, it's very important not to give up. I'm always saying this, that the first layers, they don't look too finished, and that's kind of the point, because you are building your art through these different layers, and that's also what gives you the very interesting end result. And at least that's the kind of well, that's my style of creating art. Yours might be different, but as said, if you are testing and trying the same to create something in the same way that I do, I would say never give up, and always remember that, especially with Neocolor IIs, you can pretty much just build layers on layers on layers. So if you have a good quality paper, it can handle lots of layers whenever using these crayons. And the waxy surface ensures that you know, it just turns to be more opaque the more layers you add. So if you're not happy with what you've created, just keep working. I'm sure you will get there in the end, and you will have a wonderful end result. But building layers also means that you will have that interesting texture, and you can see different colors kind of showing through a bit from different layers. And that's what I find so interesting, and that's why I want to really work this way, and what inspires me to work with these crayons. My own learning curve with Neocolor IIs has been interesting and long, and I keep learning. I think always when I use these crayons, and I use them a lot, as you know, I always seem to learn something new. And I think that's also what keeps me kind of interested in using these crayons more and more. But the more I use these for landscapes and different nature subjects, the more I really love these. So I know that many people use Neocolor IIs for more traditional, maybe like picturesque or kind of more traditional illustrations. But for me, they are the perfect medium for nature art, and that's what I'm also sharing a lot here on my channel. And I think many of you enjoy that as well, so I'm kind of happy that I can, in that way, keep creating what I really, really love to do. As you can see, I started by adding the crayon straight on the paper and building that first layer of color. After that, I started to mix the crayons more on the palette and creating this paint-like consistency that I then used with a brush to add some paint and pigment to the paper. And then I get back to crayons also here and there. So I want to start adding details and shadows and also just drawing directly again on the paper with the crayons. And this, I would say, kind of summarizes why I love Neocolor IIs. It's just so much fun to mix these different techniques, and that way you can also get very interesting end result whenever creating art with these crayons. As I am adding the final layers and finishing touches, I want to also encourage you today to be a bit more experimental with your own art. So for me, what has been really inspiring this year is that I have challenged myself to draw and paint new subjects. So whether you are someone who enjoys creating maybe botanical art or drawing animals, why not give a try and kind of paint a landscape? Or if you're more of a landscape artist, maybe take a look at those tiny details that you can see in the nature and focus in one of those for a change. I think it's always so much fun to challenge yourself. I mean, not always. Sometimes you want to be on your comfort zone, and that's fine. But for me, this year has really been about challenging myself to also kind of draw and paint those subjects which I'm not super familiar with or which might even scare me a bit. And that's also what has taken my art to the next level, and also my experiment and experience with my art has really improved. So it's something that I'm constantly also reminding myself that what could I do differently if I have the energy to do that? And it's not always. Sometimes, as said, you just want to be in a comfort zone. But if you feel like that today, maybe challenge yourself and create something that you don't usually find yourself gravitating towards too. At this point, my palette is already looking super messy and it has layers and layers of different colors. But oh, that just, I think, shows that it's been a fun art session and a fun journey to find new color mixes and adding those interesting layers on your art. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I really hope that it inspires you to create some art of your own. As said, the reason I started YouTube in the first place was that I wanted to share the inspiration and also give you some ideas and inspiration how you can maybe enjoy your own art journey a bit more today or this week. So take some time today or at least this week to create some art just for you and enjoy the journey. And also, I hope that you have enjoyed your holiday season. I know that it can be kind of busy time for many people. It can be very relaxing or it can be stressful. We all have our different experience and every year is a bit different. So I hope that you've enjoyed it, whatever your experience has been. And now is also a good time to take some time for you and your art. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. New Neocolor II videos are coming, so this is a art supply that is constantly present on my channel. That much I can promise you. So as said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you very soon in my next video. And until then, I hope that you will enjoy your own art journey. See you soon. Bye for now.